Now we will switch gears and talk about how the testing environment can impact the way an accommodation is provided. With a rapid move to online testing, this is something that must be covered. The important takeaway is that the rules and regulations that govern accommodations do not change. A scribe still can only record what the student instructs the scribe to write. A reader still can only read the words as written on the test. Nothing changes in what accommodators and accommodations may do or provide. What changes is the medium in which the students and accommodators are interacting with the test. Some of the accommodations which may look a little different are scribe, human reader, stop the clock, calculator, dictionary and thesaurus, and assistive technology. This is not an exhaustive list. To know exactly how these accommodations can be provided on a specific test, it is imperative to read the documentation for the test being proctored. For instance, one test may be an online test and a calculator accommodation is provided online. Another test may be online as well, but calculators may be offered via handheld calculator. Each test can have different accommodations, but all accommodations provided on any test must adhere to the regulations covered in this training. On this screen, you will notice a very basic example of how testing environment can impact the way an accommodation is provided. However, it does not impact the regulations that govern the limits of an accommodation. Let's say we have two tests. Test A is given completely online. There is no paper and pencil option. Test B is given completely paper and pencil. There is no online option. These strict environments require accommodations to look a little different. For instance, on test A, the online test, a scribe may become a typist, but on test B, the paper and pencil, all responses would be handwritten by the scribe. What the scribe can do does not change. The scribe still may only record word for word what the student says. For a reader, on the online-only test without a paper option, the reader would simply read the computer screen, or the student could utilize text reader software. On the paper and pencil test, a human reader would read the paper test book. Stop the clock on an online test is likely controlled within the testing platform, whereas on a paper and pencil test, it would have to be manually logged. Calculators on an online-only test are likely provided within the testing platform, but on a paper and pencil test, a handheld would be provided. Once again, the accommodations themselves are the exact same. This is also an extreme example of a test only given in one medium or another. Often, tests, much like the state KSA test, are provided in multiple formats that include both online and paper and pencil versions. That is why it is imperative that you read the literature regarding how to provide accommodations for each and every test you provide accommodations for. The KSA, AKSA, CTE-EOP, etc. cannot be administered remotely, where the student is at one location and the proctor is in another location. Therefore, accommodations can also not be provided remotely. To recap the impact the testing environment has on accommodations, all rules within this training and the regulation regarding accommodations still apply to any accommodations provided, regardless of the testing environment. A scribe, whether typing or writing, can still only record information as provided by the student. A reader, whether reading from a computer screen or a paper booklet, may still only read what is written within the test. Because online and paper and pencil tests are interacted with differently, one you manually bubble in items with a pencil and the other you point and click with a mouse, for instance, how accommodations are provided can vary. While what an accommodation can provide does not change, how it is provided can. If you are providing accommodations, it is imperative that you review all testing literature for the test being given and understand how accommodations are to be provided for that specific exam. This can differ widely from test to test. An example of this, the ACT allows triple time, the KSA does not. It is never a good idea to assume, because you have provided accommodations for one online test, that things will be the exact same on another online test. Always read the testing literature prior to administration. If you need further assistance before improperly providing accommodations, contact us at dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Now we are to our fourth check for understanding. Question 1. When administering the online version of the state assessment, instead of paper and pencil, what can a reader do differently to help the student take the test? A. Reread questions. B. Read with inflection. C. Read from an internet-enabled cell phone screen. D. The rules are the same. The answer is D. As discussed previously in this training, what an accommodator is allowed to do and not do remains the same whether a test is given online or via paper and pencil. 2. Which of the following is not a requirement prior to providing accommodations? A. Read all manuals and testing literature for the test being given. B. Read from a computer screen if giving an online test. C. Have inclusions of special populations and administration code training. D. Verify all accommodations are current for the student prior to providing them. The answer is B. While this may be appropriate for students that have a human reader accommodation, this is not a requirement for administering state tests. Question 3. If a test administrator has given one online state test earlier in the school year, do they already understand how to provide accommodations for another online state test later in the school year? True or false? The answer is false. While what an accommodation can do remains the same from test to test, for instance, a reader may never provide answers to questions regardless of the test or testing format, how the accommodation is provided must be compatible with the testing platform. So while the role of a reader or scribe remains unchanged, how those accommodations are provided can differ from test to test. Always read the literature for the specific test you are providing accommodations for. Question 4. Depending on the accommodation, the rules that govern accommodations that will be taught in this training change depending on whether the state test given is administered online or paper and pencil. True or false? The answer is false. The rules for each accommodation remain unchanged from the regulation regardless of what format the test is being given. Question 5. The test administrator is providing scribing services for a student taking the state assessment online. What is the best way to find out how that accommodation should be provided? A. Review the inclusion of special populations regulation for the answer. B. Review the test manual for the test being given for proper instruction. C. Review this training again. D. Ask a colleague down the hall. The answer is B. For that specific test, the best resource for determining how to provide the scribe accommodation would be the testing literature. While this training and the actual regulation would certainly help you understand what a scribe can do and not do when providing this accommodation, neither one would instruct you on how to perform the scribe accommodation within the platform in which that specific test is being administered.